Hey everyone, welcome to another video. So today I'm excited to get into today's topic. I'm going to be doing something a little bit differently. So I haven't made too many trade recaps lately. Usually the videos that I make for trade recaps are something that's usually like something very interesting. I like to make my trade recaps more along trades that are very unique and require some creativity. Sometimes we don't have too much. So what I decided that I was going to do is the last day that I traded this last week was Thursday. Today it's Monday. I haven't traded yet this week. I'm planning on trading Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. So my week hasn't started yet, so I still have my markups from Thursday. And so what I decided I wanted to do is I wanted to go through a breakdown and explain what my Thursday process was like. I would say basically this is a trading session recap, and so the idea behind this is I'm going to show you the markups that I submitted in my Discord, which is it's a free group. So if you wanted to join, you can join it if you haven't. I'm going to show you the markups that I sent. I'm going to show you the trades that I took. I'm going to show you my low probability 2 losses, right? That might have worked out, might have not, right? And then I'm going to show you my 1 win. So for this session, I took 2 losses, I took 1 win, and I netted about 15R, right? So the idea behind this is to show you my thought process going into the charts. I post my trades every time I could take a trade, so I trade live in a way, right? So as an entry is happening, I'll post, for example, what it looks like. You're going to see what it looks like in the group. And then what I did in this video is I spent some time to actually show you and define why I took those trades. So I put a little bit more detail into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the bar replay, and I'm just going to hide this what just happened this week because it's not really as relevant to right now. And I'm going to show you for Thursday's price action. So first things first, I'm just going to give you an insight on the 4-hour. And so the 4-hour markups that I submitted in the group versus like what I have here, it's pretty much exactly the same, right? So this was 6-8, 4-hour, and 15-minute. So this was in the afternoon, I believe. My time zone, it looks like it was 4 p.m. In my time zone, I don't have London session until 11 p.m. So that was during Asian session. So my thought process here is on this markups. I even detailed some of the highs and lows. And what we were currently looking at is current price was sitting at this moment. My thought process is, okay, I see that the 4-hour looks like we're creating and respecting some demand zones. We just gave a reaction to a supply zone on the 4-hour that failed to create a lower low. So this is technically a weak high. My thought process is that we'll pull back into this 4-hour demand, and likely we have two possibilities, right? Likely this will hold, and then we will push into and take out these weak highs and push into probably this extreme level here, right? The other thought process is we could, for example, cause this to fail. This 4-hour is weak. This 4-hour supply failed to break structure to the downside. So it's unlikely, but it is possible that we could take this out. This could serve as inducement. We could tap here and then generate a reaction before going short. But overall, one second, someone's at the door. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay, so my thought process was I'm looking for a reaction. I'm looking for the 4-hour weak supply to push price into this demand zone. Possibly this demand zone will generate a reaction and take out the highs, right? So two options of what I'm looking for. Now, if we scroll down, and that's something that's sent in my group chat, right? If I scroll down a little bit further, we get to my updates. This would be during the time where this would be, for example, this would be during my session for trading. So this is sent at, I believe that time zone would be 11 or 10. This would be at 10:20 p.m., which is 40 minutes before my session begins. And so the updated markups kind of clean things up a little bit. My thought process was it looks like we're going to go short. You can see that I have this little dotted arrow line pushing price into this 4-hour zone. And I was looking for potentially a tap of this refined 15-minute zone. So that was my thought process. I had this price pulled up. We came into this area. We didn't come back into supply. So in my mind, I know price is going to go short, right? You can kind of see how we're building these steps going up. we have to have some sort of pullback. But I still at this moment am potentially considering looking for a long that could potentially take price into that refined supply before dropping. So at that moment, 15-minute was still showing some signs of bullishness. We did have a break of structure bearish, but price here was beginning to be bullish, and I did believe that we probably could get a tap of that. So you're going to see some trades that I took as a result of that. So then when I scroll down, you can go ahead and see this was my markups as well. It's loading 1 second. So I have this is a sell to buy that makes a new high, right? What my thought process was at this moment was that I was looking for potentially price to come into this extreme demand, right? It is a last sell to buy candle. Here we have this wick. This did not take liquidity, so it doesn't have inducement at this moment either, so it's not necessarily something that I would be very aggressive with. I would look for a trade from the refined extreme, and you're going to see that, right? And then potentially I would use this as liquidity for this POI because there was no inducement for that supply either. So on both sides, I saw some weakness. So this is the first trade that I took. It was a loss. I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like on the chart. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop to the 15-minute time frame. So let's do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewind all the way into that session, and I will unpause it when I get to that. Awesome. So here we are. So these are my notes that I have, basically what my thoughts were as this was occurring, right? So basically we're going to look at price before this actually gets invalidated, right? So my thought process was we just made this potential high, right? It looks like price can pull back, and ideally I would like to see this hold. The actual swing would be from this low to this high. Here you can see that we broke to the downside, we took out the low, and then we took the high. So my thought process here was I think that we could respect, there'd be two areas where I could consider going long from before we get to the 4-hour demand. And it would be something in here. That would be the more than likely scenario. The reason why I was looking for longs was because this is an ideal supply to continue shorts, right? This is basically where we have the buy to sell wicks that ended up being responsible before we created this reaction that broke structure, right? 15-minute structure is bearish, so I'm looking for shorts, but at the same time, where do I want to look for shorts from? Probably somewhere in here to fill the imbalance that we've left behind. If this gives a bearish change of character, which means if this low goes, then this could be structural inducement for the POI above if we do get longs, right? This green area, which would basically be the 15-minute sell to buy range. And so those are kind of my notes going into this, right? So 15-minute here is bullish. If this goes, it goes bearish. This would be the extreme that has to go from that swing, right? So now what I want to do is when price comes into my 15-minute POI, let me just darken my crosshairs here because I know that some people cannot see the chart this way. There we go. So this would be the 15-minute POI. Once price comes into tap here, what I then would do is I would go to the 1-minute time frame because I want to see how price behaves on the 1 minute. And I'm going to show you some things that I think are very helpful, that have helped me a lot when I trade. Even if you take losses, this is a good way to learn. So let's see, uncover these notes. That is okay, perfect. All right, so on the 1 minute time frame, here's what we're looking at. Let's go through here. Okay, so price comes in to tap the 15-minute. Immediately what we have here, it looks like a change of character, right? So on this side, for example, we have this low that gives a reaction, forms an extreme, takes liquidity, right? And then that's when we get this push to the downside. So this is one swing on this 1 minute time frame, right? But here we make this low, we take the high, and we make a new low. After that happens, we have a change of character. We shift bullish, sell to buy, right? Engulfing 3 strong candles to the upside, so we take this high. So at this moment, it's potentially looking like we're going to get a bullish reaction. Now, one thing that is important for me is that when I'm trading any point of interest, if I look here, this POI was left behind with no inducement of liquidity within the range. And so this is a very clean push. I could outline this, for example, and this is kind of what it would look like, right? So in my mind, that's a very clean push. We don't have a point of liquidity anywhere there. So when I see something like that, what that tells me is, although this did sweep liquidity before pushing to the upside, we don't have inducement for this 1 minute. So the 15 minutes, something that I'm going to be eyeing reactions, but considering that we have this very strong continuation, this is where the move was originated from. I would only consider taking a buy as a reaction to this 1 minute refinement that we could even refine to the seconds, right? Now at the same time, if I don't have inducement of liquidity for that POI, what I will look for is for liquidity being generated upon approach of that zone. And so what that's technically going to look like in most cases is that we're going to see an early buyer's or an early seller's trap. Now, there's a lot of ways that we could look for something like that. Usually all that we're looking for is a change of character that occurs just before tapping that POI that ends up failing, right? So we have the first change of character that occurs here, right? This is one, right? And then so we expect price to be bullish. So a lot of people would get pretty aggressive with some buys here, and then they'd get taken out. So now what do we have? A change of character that ended up failing, and we go bearish. We leave behind what looks like equal lows, right? Which is good. We're seeing some liquidity, and we're bearish. So we're expecting what? Price to continue 1 minute structure bearish. Then what do we have? A very aggressive sell to buy engulfing to the upside that makes a new high. So now we have a change of character that was bullish, that failed. Now we have a change of character that's bullish, that took out the failed change of character. And then what happens is immediately this also comes back and fails. So I'm not willing to take a trade off of any of these POIs because we have not come back to the extreme. So in my mind, this is just traps and early liquidity basically being generated for my actual POI. This was a failed attempt to go bullish and continue. The current 15-minute bullish structure, so change of character bullish failed equals structural inducement for the extreme. So now we have some strong 1 minute lows that created highs. So in this case, this would be liquidity for the POI below, and it's just within 2 or 3 pips, I think. There we go, just about 2 pips before tapping the POI. So for me, that makes sense. Now, what can I do? I have a 1 minute POI. I don't have inducement of liquidity. I would really like to see the extreme be tapped. When I see that something sweeps liquidity just before taking off, a lot of times it's going to be something that be below that sweep that occurs, which is where we are going to find the best POI a lot of times. So in this case, I'm going to drop to the 5 second, and I'm going to show you my seconds refinement, what I saw there. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop to the 15 seconds. Okay, let's look to the left. Could we refine this 1 minute POI? Take some moment here. Let's leave it to load. I'll be right back. Oh, there we go. It did load. Awesome. All right, so actually we can see that the 15 second, we have this area here. If we looked at the 5 second, let's see if we can clean it up even more. What we're basically trying to find is where we have the origin of an injection of liquidity that creates a change of character or the impulsive move bullish. We're looking for an extreme, right? Awesome. So here's what we see. So previous to this, right, we've made this low, right? So this was the low. This is the 15-minute structural low. Price then goes to the upside here. We can see that we're showing some impulse. 5 second changes character bullish. We're pulling back. Here we've built some liquidity, right? We push to the upside again. We're respecting this area, but this is weak because this has failed to break structure to the downside. So we're building liquidity here. We have some, let's look at this, like in this case, we're going to mark these out so you can see it. We have these relatively equal highs that are weak, that are failing to break structure. This sweeps liquidity. Instead of breaking structure and making a new low, what do we have? A reversal, right? So we take out this resting liquidity here, and then we inject to the upside. Here we have sell to buy price action that gives a 5 second change of character and is the origin in this 1 minute POI that shifts for a 15-minute bullish break of structure, right? So in my mind, on the 1 minute time frame, I wouldn't want to enter from this. This is kind of like what we would say is a gap an imbalance, right? This is the origin of the move. So I would really prefer to take a trade off of that if I was going to see one, right? So we're going to scroll over here. So we already have inducement for the area here. And so now what we would be basically looking for is to take any entry. We want to see some signs of confirmation. Now, to verify this is the trade that I took, let me scroll back here. Here you can see the timestamp. So here you can see the timestamp, the date, price came in, gave a tap to that 5-second extreme. Here you can see the liquidity that we marked out that was being generated. And this is basically the entry that we're going to give. So let me show you that. All right, so here's my thought process. The 15-minute was bullish at this moment. We do have an unmitigated supply above that is considered strong, that is responsible for creating a break of structure. My thought process, we could fill an imbalance and we can push price into the supply before continuing to the downside. So this would technically be, in my mind, although the 4-hour is bearish, this would be counter trend to the 4-hour, but this would be in alignment with 15-minute structure to basically create a continuation that aligns the 15-minute with the 4-hour. In this case, it did not work out, but here's my thought process. Price came in and tapped the 5S. So when I see this, I see on this time frame we have a liquidation of relatively equal lows, right? And all of this structure here, right? We already took that out there, but we have formation of equal lows, right? We push to the upside and aggressively create that liquidation into the POI. We've now mitigated the 5S, and immediately we have a V-shaped recovery, VSR, shaped recovery, that directly changes character. This is a buy to sell that makes this low that then gets taken out. So when I see on the seconds time frame, if I'm being very aggressive, I can take a trade from a very refined extreme, like in this case, I would not mind not waiting for too many things when I can see that I have, for example, V-shaped recovery that creates a change of character at an extreme that's a 5S refinement, right? So this tapped, we have that. At that moment, I'm already looking for an entry. So what I want to see is I want to see price pull back into this area. I know that I have an extreme here, which is a sell to buy engulfing that broke structure. But at the same time, a lot of times with V-shaped recoveries, we get a mitigation into the 50%. So in my mind, I took my entry as soon as I was able to cover the low, right, of that V-shaped recovery with my 1 pip stop loss. So in this case, I was just waiting for price to come down enough to cover that zone. Once I could cover that low, I was fine, because unless this fails, then likely this trade would succeed in this case. So you can see my trade, I had a very aggressive run to the upside is what I was expecting. This would have been a 14R trade into that supply. In this case, it did not work out. What we did have is, after getting my entry, price ran up, created a 5-second break of structure, right? So we already changed character on the 5S, it's bullish. We are respecting the extreme here, right? That broke 5S structure. Order flow is now shifting bullish. And my expectation is now, this would be a 1-minute POI. So this is a buy to sell 1 minute that broke structure and pushed into the 5S, respected the extreme, respected the 1-minute POI. So my thought process is, once this goes, I'd be kind of safe with this trade. I wouldn't mind if I wanted to take break even, I would be able to set it at that moment. It would only require a run of like 3.7 R, right? At this moment, what we do see though is that this trade ran about 3 R just before failing, right? So let's play that forward. You can see it comes back in and then it just runs straight through. So this trade failed. In my mind, it was very aggressive. It was one of those lower probability trades, but because I was trading from an extreme, if it was going to work, this would be the area that I would consider to work from, right? So you can see that that trade did fail. And then what else? Then I sent my updated markup, right? Now this is a potential supply zone if that's going to happen. I still at this moment am waiting for a mitigation of the 4-hour and that 15-minute refinement that has all that imbalance, right? So let me show you what the next trade looks like that I took, and then what we did as a result of that. All right, so this was a trade from the extreme. So this is what it looks like on this time frame. You can see there's no bar replay on this. The timestamp, that's when we took it. It was posted on that day. Here we can see what this looks like a little bit. It's the same exact one, just with a little bit more detail. And let me show you what I saw. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that trade and then why that trade ended up failing, right? So let's go to that one. And then we're going to be on the last trade that is the winner. All right, so let me pause this, find that zone, and then I'll bring it right back up. Awesome. So here we are. So this was the next setup that I was looking for. So now what we have at this moment is we have a little bit more markups than we had originally. So if I hide this, you can kind of see I added a couple things, right? But this is to give the explanation. So what I saw here is we have this sell to buy here that broke structure on the 15-minute, right? We full body candle closed up here. We had a pullback that came in that failed to mitigate. We've left behind this imbalance, right? And we'll close bearish. Upon opening a new candle on the 15-minute, we swept to the downside, filled the imbalance, mitigated the majority of that POI, probably not to the 50% exactly, but almost, right? Pretty close. At that moment, we shifted bullish, and that's when we created this run up. We had that break of structure on the 15-minute, as we already know. Here, we took the low, right? So 15-minute structure was bearish, but when we tapped into this wick of that 15-minute that created that run up, at that moment, what we did is we generated a response to this, and then we have here what looks like the sell to buy. So this is the last sell candle before we have 1, 2, 3, 4 buy candles that broke that 15-minute and created a change of character on the 15-minute that was bullish, right? Which is why I was looking for that trade here, because even though the extreme or the area responsible for creating the break was here, I could have been a little bit aggressive to take a trade from here that could tap this zone. So in my mind, I was still potentially looking for something like that. Now, here's what we can do is we can bar replay. Once price comes in to tap that zone, well, that was pretty quick, a little too quick. On the 15-minute, once we get a tap, what we do is we immediately go to the 1-minute time frame. Now, if I was going to take a buy from here, my thought process would have been, okay, if I'm going to take this buy, at the minimum, I can expect a reaction or a pullback to this zone before continuing, right? Or I can be very aggressive and maybe hope for something like this and use this as structural inducement potentially, right? So this was the lowest point in that 15 minutes. So as long as that didn't go, this trade could potentially work. So we're going to drop to the 1-minute time frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the 1-minute refined notes that I have. Awesome. Okay, so let's go into this. So here we have, this is the 15-minute zone that we've marked out. If I look to the left, basically what these red lines indicate is the change of characters or the alignments of the direction of before this goes for that impulse, right? So we have this high that makes this low, it takes the liquidity here, taps the extreme, and then we make a new high. So this is protected, right? We pull back and we make a new high. So this is supposed to be protected. This high then creates a failure of this low, takes liquidity, but at this moment what we've now developed is we're ranging. So in this moment we have a complex pullback from this high to this low, right? Price pulls up, fails to make a high. Pulls down, fails to make the low, mitigates, gives a reaction, pushes up. Here we are creating a compression of pricing. Then what happens is we push to the downside and we sweep it. So we have a new low, right? And technically, technically the high that took liquidity before breaking structure, that directly broke structure on candle body, these are sweeps that happen, right? This is basically the extreme. So in my mind, until this goes is when I consider price to go bullish, right? Because all of this is internal to the swing, right? Even though we're sweeping the lows, right? And so in my mind, when we have this sweep of liquidity to the upside and then we have this final pullback before creating that impulse that breaks 15-minute structure on the body, the way I see this is that we have this area here. So we have this low that basically came to test the highs, respected the supply, gave a reaction that swept liquidity, right? Before pushing to the upside. Here we have another sweep, and then we take this high. So that's where we take the high. So basically in my mind, what I'm seeing here is that this push here is the one responsible for taking out that protected high. So this is where we're shifting bullish. So this is the 1 minute extreme that takes liquidity and then creates that bullish change of character. This could potentially be considered liquidity. In my mind, we did sweep here, right? So this could be liquidity for the extreme, but it's not the way that I usually like to see it, right? So I need to see more than likely to get some confidence in this. I wanted to see some generation of inducement upon approach of this, and I want to see that liquidated and a liquidation into the mitigation because of just how messy price is, and I really wanted to be confident about a trade like this. Now, you're going to see a lot of similarities between this trade and the one that I showed you a couple minutes ago, right? So what I'm looking for is a refinement of this 1 minute, a tap of this refinement, right? So at this moment, I remember that I did not see a refined 5S or 15 second that I liked. So I was just going to use the entire 1 minute zone, and I was going to be cautious about what I was looking for there. So let's go ahead and add the second part of this trade. And what we're going to look at is we're going to focus on what happened as a result here. All right, so first thing that we have here is we have this buy to sell that taps into this 15-minute zone. So this was the 15-minute. This would be the 1 minute zone in here, right? So as we tap, we generate a reaction. That reaction comes back to respect that supply that broke structure in here. This was the low in the pullback that created this high that broke, right? So we came in, respected supply, and pushed for a deeper mitigation. In here, we have a tap of that 1 minute POI. And at that moment, what we can begin looking for is, okay, well, I want to see some generation of liquidity, but at the same time, I want to see a 5S or 15-second potential entry, right? So let's go ahead and add these extra notes that we're going to need, and we're going to drop to the lower time frame, right? So first thing that you're going to notice is on here, what you can see is this is going to be a 1 minute V-shaped recovery, right, and change of character, which is the same thing that we looked above for. So we wanted to see a generation of liquidity for the POI here because we did not have clear inducement of liquidity. It just was not clean enough. We wanted to do more of a confirmation like entry, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to drop to the lower time frames. Let's go to the 15-second. Okay. Let's go ahead and add some more data here. Okay. So initially what we saw was this is the high of the pullback. So we tapped into here, we generated a reaction. This is the extreme of that reaction, right? Price then took out that low, right? And just before coming in to tap this 1 minute, we have made this low. We pulled back on the 15-second and made this high that broke structure to the downside. At that moment, what we now have is we have a tap of the 1 minute POI. That 1 minute tap generates a reaction that gives us on the 1 minute time frame a V-shaped recovery. This is the 15 seconds, but you saw what it looked like on the 1 minute. Here you can see it on the 1 minute as well, right? This high makes the low that taps into the 1 minute, and then we have what? An early bias trap that generated as it failed, and you can see that this is where we took our actual entry from. Let's go ahead into this, right? So at this moment, what we see is we tap the 1 minute, we create a change of character to the upside, a 1 minute bullish V-shaped recovery. So at this moment, usually what we would be looking for is to take an entry. We would look for an entry at this area here. This swept liquidity, mitigated the POI, and it is the last sell to buy before we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bullish candles that shift the 1 minute bullish. Now, because this POI didn't have enough inducement, it wasn't clear enough, I wanted to take a confirmation like entry. So in my mind, what I need to see is this would be an ideal place to enter, but because I needed to see an early buyer's trap, I would expect this potentially to fail. If I was going to take a trade, I would usually want to wait for, in here for example, I would wait for a 5S change of character, and then I would take buys here, right? That would be something that I was looking for, right? The other thing that I could expect to happen is I could expect to see price, now that 1 minute's bullish, pull back, respect this, create a new high, and I'd be comfortable taking that second change of character, which would be a confirmation like entry on the 1 minute time frame, right? So that did not happen. What we did see is, let's see, this serves as liquidity for the POI. We see a failed change of character. Yeah, that's fine. So we haven't gone to that point. So we have this area here. Basically what we're doing is it looks like we're building some liquidity, potentially for this demand zone. So a lot of people probably would have seen this as inducement for this POI. At the same time, this would be the early buyer's trap that basically did fail. So in this case, what we see is upon approaching this zone, had we had a limit, we would have just been ran through. We did not see an entry confirmation on here. So let's look at this on the 5-second time frame. What we would need to see, as I mentioned, is a 5-second change of character. At that moment, we did not have that happen. And so price just runs through, giving us no reason to enter, right? Now what we have is we could see that this is it's a buy to sell, right? That now breaks structure and creates a failure of the 15-minute and the 1-minute zones that we're looking at. At this exact moment, this is the 15-minute extreme. So what I was thinking at this moment is, while this has been taken, maybe what we could see is a sweep happening. Now, in my mind, what I see here is this is the buy to sell that creates that new low. So if I was going to be marking out structure, let's mark this out properly. We're just going to go like this. This would be the highest point. So I would like to see this go. This would be the supply that directly caused a break of structure. So I would like to see either two things happen. I would like to see price come into here to create a potential flip, right? Where we could potentially take a trade from. Or I would like to see this completely invalidated and taken before looking for an entry to go long. Otherwise, supply is still in control. We saw that we generated no good entry off of this POI. We created an early buyer's trap that failed, right? And so now what we're looking for is, let's take a look to see what happens here. We're going to wait for the 5S to tap into that supply zone. Let's see. It's a little slow. Every time I'm recording, it slows down my whole computer. Let's see here. Keep going. I'm just going to I'm going to pause it and press play so that it goes on. Okay, so all the data is loaded now. Alright, so now what we have here is price has come into the supply zone, and we have one of two things. If we fail to make a new low, which fails to make a new low, we could potentially see this as a supply to demand flip, right? As I kind of showed you in that markup. The other thing that could happen is, if this does create a new low, we're no longer looking for buys. At this moment, not only would we have taken the 15-minute low, but we would have done it twice. And so it's unlikely that we would have really seen anything occur. At this moment, I'm still hopeful that this could be a sweep and that there's a reason to take a long, right? So what we have here is a failure to make the new lows. This is basically a higher low than the previous, and price then shifts bullish, right? So we make this high, we pull back, right? And then we make this new high. So on this time frame, what we're seeing on the 5-second is we're seeing a bullish order flow on the 5-second time frame. We have this high that then actually sweeps and creates a new low, right? So at this moment, what we've done is we've taken the high, we've taken the low. So price has now given us 5S bearish order flow. So the question is this going to hold? Because we see that this is a sweep, what I'm thinking is, okay, this was a sweep that came into tap what looks like probably the extreme area here on the 5-second. On the 15-second, maybe it's one POI in itself. I want to see what happens here. This would basically be considered strong, as this took the low. And if I see something go from here, or some sort of interaction that takes that level, I would consider taking an entry, because now what my expectation is, because this supply failed to make a low, this would be weak and has to go. So if I'm going to take an entry somewhere, it's going to be to take out this high and take out this supply, right? So that's my thought process. What ends up happening is when we sweep, when we take that low, price then shifts bullish, right? The order flow. And what happens is we actually take this high. So on the 5-second time frame, we now have a bullish change of character. And now what we can see is we have two areas where we could consider taking entries from. So we have an area of interaction. You know, if we looked at, for example, well-priced territory from this high to this low, right? Something like this, we would ideally look for this POI. Now, at the same time, a lot of times what happens is when we see a 5S reaction at an extreme, price can be incredibly aggressive, and that can give us no time to potentially get a good entry. So we have to sometimes be aggressive. So at this moment, what I saw is once we got this bullish change of character, what I wanted to see was, okay, we can either have price come into this area of interaction where we have the supply. This is the buy to sell engulfing the left behind imbalance that broke structure, or I guess swept the low, right? Took the low. So, and then we have this area here, which really didn't do anything. We have this extreme here that was untapped, which, you know, looking back at that now, that I see it now, I didn't see it before. This would have been the most ideal place to take that trade. Now, this area didn't do anything. If anything, this would be better for inducement of liquidity for the lower POI. I wanted to be aggressive in this one because, you know, I had a very aggressive target. So once again, to show you what that entry looks like here on the 5-second time frame, right? Same exact zone. So what I did is I just waited until I could cover the majority of the POI with a 1.5 pip stop loss. In this case, I saw that price made this high and we pulled back. We were starting to pull back here. So as soon as I could get that potential for an entry, I hit enter on that pullback. And we did get 5-second change of character again, realigning on this time frame. So what we have is the trend is aligning on the 5S bullish. So this trade had a 1.5 pip stop loss. My thought process is if price comes down to tap this high, it's going to keep me in. At the same time, if this gets taken out, I could consider a better entry if it makes sense. At this moment, this was my entry. You can see that we took some highs here as we continued bullish. We took this weak supply that failed to break structure, and this was my target. Once this goes, I would consider taking break even. Now, my target would have been much higher, right, as I kind of showed in the actual screenshot here. I would have been waiting for this to go. This would be the first target, and then potentially that supply above. You can see it looks good on here, but that was, once again, one of those lower probability trades. It just didn't work out, and that's fine. Sometimes we take trades like that. It quickly got taken out after a couple minutes, and it only ran for how many pips? It ran for about 3.5 pips, 3.6 pips. So same exact thing as we had earlier, right? And so immediately after that happened, what can we do? We can look at the 15-minute time frame to gauge an idea of what's happening, right? Let's go ahead and turn those things off. And then at this moment, what we now have is another 15-minute break of structure, right? So at this moment, we have the wick taking it out. So what I'm expecting is very likely at this moment, there's no more reason to continue for buys. We're going to completely fail. And so when I say 15-minute break of structure, it hasn't been confirmed yet until here. This would be the third trade. So let me show you my thoughts. I think I have some notes. Let's see here. Okay, so let's get into these notes. So two things that I have here, right? If we take a look at current, let's say, behavior of price, what I've noticed is that for a good amount of time, we are, for the most recent one, for example, we had a respect of the 4 hour and we completely ignored the 15-minute. So recently we see a tap of the 4 hour and a strong impulse. Recent trend are important to notice. The 15-minute is left unmitigated. So I like to say that I don't like to hold shorts that are based on 15-minute structure in a 4-hour demand, right? Same thing is I don't want to hold 15-minute buys in a 4-hour supply. So to me, if I was going to take a sell from a, let's say low probability area, right? I would not want to take that 15-minute sell and, you know, on a past a 4-hour demand that has been unmitigated, because I could generate a reaction that could very easily take me out. So let me go ahead and show you what my thought process was. Now at this moment, I've confirmed that extreme has gone. We've swept that. So this is going to be inducement of liquidity for lower pricing. I could expect a small reaction out of here, but I know that the majority of the imbalance is left for the 4-hour and for the 15-minute. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at that 1-minute POI. Or not 1-minute POI because we don't have a POI yet. Our 1-minute notes, right? And then I'm going to show you my setup here. Okay. So now that what we have here is this is the 15-minute low, and it's broken with a body candle closure on the 1-minute time frame. So here we have this is the low that gave that reaction, gave a 1-minute change of character to the upside. So this took liquidity, right? So it swept liquidity to the left, right? And then broke structure. So this is a change of character that failed. It took liquidity. and it directly broke structure. This is a 1 minute strong high that caused that break of structure. And we also broke the 15 minute, so the expectation is lower pricing until at the minimum that 4 hour demand zone. And so this is what my thought process was. If this is considered strong, it's not going to go, unlikely to go until we have this tapped. So let me show you what my trade looked like on the seconds time frame, right? I would look for anything at that extreme. Once I saw confirmation of that, let me show you here, and then my actual entry. Okay, 5 seconds. Awesome. Now to show you that I did take this trade, once again with timestamp in the group while we wait for this to load. Here you can see that the following setup that I sent was this entry, right? So this is what this looked like, right? This is before I even had time to adjust my targets and my stop. This was a tap, shows you where I entered my trade from, about, and then this is the actual trade and what it looks like, right? And that ran for the full 17R. I had an update here at the 10R mark, right? And then that's the 17R. So that shows you the trade that I took. Here's my thought process. What we have here, let's let this load a second here. Come on. Has the data somewhere here. All right, there we go. All right, so we have this buy to sell pivot that ended up breaking structure here. That's considered strong. This is the only area that's unmitigated in my mind that has inducement of liquidity. We could look here and say that this is inducement of liquidity for the extreme. It broke structure. What I immediately saw that got me my idea for this entry was I saw a tap of that extreme, a respect and equal high creation, right, with an immediate V-shaped recovery. So this is a sell to buy that makes that high, right, and immediately that low gets taken. Whoops, let's mark this a little bit thicker. So that low gets taken. So change of character, V-shaped recovery as a reaction to that 1 minute extreme. At that moment, as long as that's protected, I'm not expecting price to come back to that. So what I wanted to wait is a little bit more confirmation to see if we were immediately going to take out this low. This is the low that's weak, as it's failed to take that high at that moment. Here on the 1 minute time frame, this is a sell to buy that makes that high on the 1 minute. So now we have 5S is order flow is bearish, 1 minute changes character bearish, and what we have here is another V-shaped recovery that mitigates what looks like sponsored candles that mitigate the extreme. So we have a buildup, a supply chain forming, the respect of that strong high. This is a 1 minute buy to sell engulfing on the 1 minute time frame. And now what I'm doing is I'm looking for an entry here. So I see this very extreme point here, right? This is basically on the 5S. This is the buy to sell engulfing. This is on the 1 minute time frame. We can refine it to this zone. I guess we should look at it on the 1 minute. Why not? So that you can see that as well. Let's give it that moment to load here. All right. Where is it at? Here we are. Okay. Here you can see that 1 minute buy to sell. Let's zoom in a little bit better. And the thing about this one is that this buy candle is completely engulfed by the sell. So that's very confident. Here you see the 1 minute change of character. We have this sell to buy that makes that high with that wick. And that goes. So we have a 1 minute change of character. Awesome. So then let's get back into the actual entry. What I'm seeing here. So same exact thing as we were looking for earlier. The only difference is now we're in alignment for shorts, as the 15 minute has confirmed a break of structure. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm looking for a reaction to this extreme because that's unmitigated, and I think that as long as that's covered, I won't have that loss. So I'm watching 5 minute order flow into this zone. I see that we've given a tap to this 5S extreme. Unlikely that this is going to break structure. It has already failed. But now what we have is liquidity buildup at the extreme. We have this 5S. We have this sell to buy makes this internal high. We pull back. We respect that demand. We make that new high. Now what we have is we have this high. This is pullback, extreme here. We have this as the extreme. This is the sell to buy that directly made that new high. We have that mitigation of that 1 minute POI that's on the 5S is a little bit more refined. Once again, here you can see another V-shaped recovery, right, on the 5 second time frame. Immediately we have a change of character bearish. So Now what we have here is 1 minute is bearish, right? Well, we've had a tap of the 5S refined. I'm now looking for an entry as soon as I see this fail, because this is the last sell to buy that made this internal high of this swing, right? So this is minor structure we're kind of looking at. Once we have this happen here, and then we get enough to cover this high with a, what was this, a 1.2 pip stop loss, I'm willing to take the trade. As long as this doesn't get swept, I'm going to be good. And once we pull back enough to cover with 1 pip, 1.2 pips, I hit that entry. We change character here. We take that low. Price then pushes back to the upside. Of course, what does it do? Create equal highs, but it's still respecting that. So as long as we're covered, we're fine. So price did come back to test this a couple of times. What we did have though, however, is this weak low failed to make a new high. So this should go. Price did take out that level and come in to get a slightly deeper mitigation into that extreme that also is weak and failed to take that high. So at this moment, what we had was, I think, what felt like 40 minutes or 45 minutes or something of price in this range. This was my entry. What we can see is after we tap this, as long as this is still considered weak, this should not take my entry high, right? So this was the extreme high that was being respected at that moment after we took that low. Price was just playing around for a while, but as you can see, price eventually broke out of that range. We broke structure here, so this was the lowest point that gave that reaction. Failed to make a new high again, so this is considered weak. We took out that weak low. As long as this doesn't take out this high, we're good. Price pulled back up, swept some internal liquidity, and then melted and sold off. So then what are we doing? We're watching this on the 1 minute time frame, and we're just trying to manage this trade. And once again, as I showed, my target was going to aggressively be the 4-hour time frame. Of course, I would have loved to have an entry at or TP at that 15-minute POI and have this potentially run 27R. But at this moment, we were getting late in my session, and usually when I see something like this, and the previous trades are showing that we are tapping the 4-hour and going, this is not a very well-priced trade on the 15-minute time frame, right? So in my mind, I'm not considering holding this very much longer when I know that we have POIs above that we could potentially come back to mitigate. So just as my plan showed, I targeted this 4-hour and we took 17.58R. We had a nice run on that trade. So we took 2 losses, 1 win, 15 total R, and that was my session for Thursday. So hopefully this gives you some insight onto what my trading sessions can sometimes look like. I do take losses, and my losses sometimes are low probability. Sometimes they don't make sense why I took them, but the reality is that on the lower time frames, I'm seeing something different, and I'm being a little bit more aggressive at times. So hopefully this video gives you some insight onto what a trading session can look like. No crazy R trades. This was just a 17.5 R trade. We did take 2 losses, total R, 15 R for the day, risking about 2%. I think this week we were risking 2.5% per trade. So I mean, this was a pretty profitable trade in terms of percentage overall. So hopefully this video was helpful. Let me know if you want me to make more trading session breakdowns showing you my loss and my wins. Usually it's something like this. I always say that usually I'll take like 3 trades. Usually 1 or 2 is a loss, and then the last one's always a winner in most cases, right? So let me know what you think about this video, and I'll catch you for the next one. Have a beautiful trading week. Can't wait to see you for the next video.